Boy, did this kid pick a good night to have his phone out filming. In 2008, a teen decided he wanted to film himself playing the very creepy Midnight Game. In a nutshell, you turn off all the lights in your house and you walk around from midnight to 3:33 a.m. And if at any point you stop moving, the Midnight Man will attack you. Around 2 a.m., the kid thinks he hears something in the kitchen, but he also thinks his mind's just playing tricks on him because he is playing this game. But he goes to check it out anyways. When he gets downstairs, he doesn't hear anything, but he does see that his door is now open. And when he goes to shut it, someone pushes back. He sprints away, goes upstairs, jumps into his room, but keeps filming. If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. In 2006, a group of cave divers decided they wanted to film a documentary in one of the most dangerous caves in the world. But only a few hours into their descent, and a freak storm erupts on land, collapsing the entrance to the cave. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks that were coming off the ceiling, they were forced to swim through one of the uncharted sections of the cave. After they've been diving for over an hour, they luckily come across this island in the middle of a tunnel, where they set up camp and wait to be rescued. After 48 hours and no sign of a rescue, the cameraman actually starts filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid. You only have about 13 minutes from the warning to the arrival of a tornado. Keep that in mind as you watch this. In 2017, a woman living in Oklahoma heard the eerie tornado siren going off outside her car, and she started filming. Instead of stopping at a nearby shelter, she decides to gun it home because she's only 10 minutes away. But by the time she was about to turn onto her street, the sky had turned totally black, and she started to panic that she wasn't going to get home in time. She finally makes it to her parking garage that's now totally pitch black, and she starts running for her door, and as she's running, she's filming. Moral of the story, don't sleep on the first floor. In 2014, a young woman woke up to strange noises coming from under her bed. When she finally worked up the courage to look, there was nothing there. The next morning when she got up, there were footprints leading right up to the sliding door that went right into her room. She instantly calls her dad, who comes over and traces the footsteps back to a house of a very troubled teen who admitted to spying on her. But he swore up and down he hadn't done that in weeks. They don't believe him, and they threaten to call the police if they ever see him on the property again. That night, the girl's on her phone in bed when she starts to hear the strange sounds again. Ever wonder what would happen if you stopped sleeping? During World War II, the Russians wanted to find a way to keep their soldiers awake longer. So they came up with this awful experiment where they took prisoners of war, put them in a gas chamber, and then exposed them to experimental drugs to see how long they could keep them awake for. Initially, the drugs seemed great. The first 4 days, the subjects were agitated, but were normal. By day 5, they stopped interacting with each other and began acting extremely paranoid. On day 9, one of the subjects screamed for so long that he tore his vocal cord. On day 14, they started eating themselves. When they turned off the gas on day 15, all of the subjects began screaming in pain, begging for them to turn the gas back on. When they didn't, they all fell asleep and died. If you scare easily, I wouldn't watch this video. In 2013, a mine explorer found this entrance to an abandoned mine and decided to go have a look around. He decides to film his experience and upload it to his YouTube channel, where he had uploaded hundreds of other videos of him exploring mines, but he never once references the paranormal or ghosts or anything like that, until this video. As soon as he steps foot inside, he tells the camera that he has a really uneasy feeling about being there and wonders if he should even keep going, but he does. Everything seems pretty normal until he gets to a section in the mine where there's a bunch of chains hanging down from the ceiling. He hears something in the back of the tunnel, so he pulls his flashlight out and he shines it towards the back, and he sees a chain swinging, and it shouldn't be, because there's no draft and he's all alone, and you can tell he's scared by the way he starts talking. Although he's totally freaked out, he wants to know what's causing the chain to swing, so he goes farther and farther into the mine until he hears something. People whispering in every direction. He gets totally spooked and runs out. If you don't want to sleep tonight, watch the whole video. This is why you should never explore the forest at night. Late at night in 2006, two men hear some strange noises coming from a forest near their house, so they decide to go have a look. After their footage went completely viral, they would admit that they actually only went into the woods just to scare themselves. They didn't actually expect to film anything. At some point on their walk, they start to notice more and more dead birds on the ground, and so one of them gets out his camera to start filming them. As they're filming the birds, you can tell that they're getting more and more spooked by the whole situation, and then one of the men hears something in the tree line, and the cameraman pans his camera to look. Human eyes don't reflect light. You're about to listen to one of the creepiest recordings on the internet. In 2013, a woman who lived alone kept waking up to these loud clicking sounds in her bedroom, so she went out and got an audio recorder and started recording her sleep. For the first month, she doesn't pick up anything other than normal sleeping sounds. And then one morning she gets up and listens to it, and she hears herself sleep talking, and someone talks back.
What are you doing?
After she uploaded it to the internet, experts confirmed that it was authentic and that she could not have made that voice. I can confirm that this is a true story. In 2004, a 16-year-old boy who was staying with a friend in their cabin up in New Hampshire was having a hard time falling asleep. Around 3 a.m., he was still awake, and he remembers thinking how eerily quiet and totally pitch black the house was, and that's when he heard it. The front door opens and someone comes inside and begins walking through the house down the hallway right outside of his door where it stops. The door opens and the boy is instantly petrified because in walks this tall, shadowy figure that marches to the center of the room and then bows onto the ground and disappears. The boy stays up all night, terrified that this thing's gonna re-emerge and just look at him. Finally, he hears his friend's mom making coffee in the kitchen, so he runs out to tell her what happened. The whole time he's explaining what happened, she's just looking at him with sympathy in her eyes. And finally she says, "My husband visited me last night too." Her husband was dead, and I was that 16-year-old boy. It's what she finds in the kitchen that's really scary. In the early 90s, a young girl was sleeping in her mom's bed when she suddenly woke up for no reason. She looked at her door and she saw her very affectionate cat kind of meowing down the hall as if someone was coming up to pet it, but she was next to her mom and they were the only ones in the house. The girl shakes her mom awake and points to the cat just as a man is walking past the door and disappears into the room across the hall. Before the man could come back out and find them, they both jump out the window, run across the street, and call the police. When the police arrive, the guy is nowhere to be found, but they do discover that the front door was unlocked, so that had to be the way he got in and out. But the mother swears up and down that she locked that door before she went to bed. A week later, the mother's cleaning their kitchen and she opens up the water heater closet where she finds this notebook that inside is their names and pictures of them in it, along with a pair of surgical gloves. Which means someone had snuck in at some point, was living in that closet spying on them, and then walking around their house at night. This story has the best ending ever. In 2003, a 9-year-old was home alone playing video games when he thinks he hears his cat meowing on the back patio, so he goes downstairs to let him in. He sees a deranged-looking man standing on his back patio howling at the sky, who then quickly looks at the boy. He grabs a fistful of cigarette butts from the ashtray, stuffs them in his mouth before he starts howling at the sky some more. After the police take the man away, they come back to talk to the boy and his family. Turns out the man had severe autism and lived in that boy's house up until his mother passed away, at which time he was transitioned to a mental institution. He broke out of that mental institution to go looking for his mom, which is how he came back to the boy's house. 15 years later, that same boy is sitting on his same back patio when he starts to hear that same meowing sound, and he looks up and it's the same autistic man walking towards his house. Knowing the man's story, he invites him into his house. The man's face lights up, he runs inside and starts crying. He was finally home. The men become friends, and every week Tom goes home to visit. I used some of the original footage, so please be advised. In the early 2000s, a video was discovered inside one of the scariest places on Earth. It's called the Catacombs, and it's one of the world's largest mass graves. To get to it, you need to wriggle through these claustrophobia-inducing tunnels hundreds of feet below the city of Paris. The video was found miles and miles into one of the least explored sections of the catacombs. The video is largely uneventful until he starts following these arrows that he sees on the wall and that he sees on the ground. And these arrows bring him to these rooms that are completely full of human bones, which catacombs experts have no idea where they are. Like, they don't know where this is. Then out of nowhere, something spooks him and he starts sprinting deeper and deeper into the catacombs until he drops his camera. And then all you hear is his panic breathing and footsteps as he disappears. While nobody knows what actually happened to this guy, everybody seems to agree that the footage is authentic. The more you think about how this true story ends, the creepier it gets. In 2015, a college student was renting the basement apartment of his friend's house. One weekend, his basement roommates take off for the night, so he decides to use that time to get some homework done distraction-free. But as soon as he sits down to do his work, his friend upstairs and his family starts making all this noise, moving furniture around, shuffling feet. It's impossible to focus, so he picks up his phone and he texts his friend. "You guys sound like you're really having a good time up there. I'm not really getting anything done. Can I come up?" And his buddy says, "No one is home. We went to Wisconsin for the weekend." Terrified, he runs out the side door to get a look in the window to see who's making all the noise. All the lights are off in the house. There's not a single car in the driveway. He had been home alone the whole time. The last one completely blew my mind. There exists a plankton called dinoflagellates that if you consume it, will reverse your sense of hot and cold, and it can last for years. Scientists recently discovered some sharks living in an active volcano, but they can't get in to study them because, well, it's a volcano and it's too hot. In 1972, Vesna Vulovic fell out of a plane at 33,000 feet, no parachute, and lived. Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish are made by the same manufacturer, and in fact, the red Sour Patch Kid is literally a Swedish fish, except with sour sugar on it. The only people that know how to open the United States president's car doors are the Secret Service. And last but not least, 1 million people got together and decided to follow this clown on TikTok, and I've got to say, guys, I'm touched. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for giving me this platform and for supporting me, and I love you guys. Thank you.